Hello, good day, my dear students. We are proceeding for a second lecture in nursing, and after learning in brief regarding the history of microbiology, we will now first of all introduce to you the role of microbiology in nursing. Nursing has various sub-subjects where you have to learn about human physiology, anatomy, you have to learn about biochemistry, and one of the important topic is the microbiology itself. So today I'll be discussing where all a microbiology can play an important role for nursing faculties, and it is important for students to know why microbiology is necessary or it is must for every student to learn about microorganisms. So first let us start about the microbiology itself. You know that I had discussed earlier, the microbiology is the study of microorganisms, those organisms which we are not able to see or we are not able to visualize with the naked eye. The resolution of naked eye, that is the simple eye of a human being, is limited, and therefore it requires the help of specialized equipment, that is microscope, to observe the organism smaller than say 0.2 mm. Microorganisms, they are extremely small, but they are very powerful. We should never underestimate the power of microbes. Though they are small, they are more powerful than other living cells. These organisms, as we had discussed earlier, but I am just revising so that you get a link with the microbiology. They are unicellular, that is, they have a single cell, or they can be multicellular. And even some of the organisms we call as acellular. Acellular do not fall into the category of unicellular or multicellular. They have a unique structure, and most viruses, prions, viroids, they fall into this category. That is, they are acellular in nature. Second important thing, microorganisms are omnipresent. They are universally present everywhere. No nook corner of the world is without microorganisms. This is due to their unique ability to survive, to reproduce under the prevailing circumstances, which is in that particular ecological niche. And hence, organisms are found even in extreme conditions of temperature, that is at a high temperature and at an extreme low temperature, extreme conditions of pH, highly acidic or highly basic environment or alkaline environment. They are found in the dry conditions. They can survive the very dry conditions where the water is extremely low. AW, water availability, is very, very less. Similarly, they are found in association with the plants. They are found in association with human microbiome. Thousands of different species of microorganisms are present in human beings. And the activities, since they are present at every place, since they are present in every environment, naturally their activities, they regulate their activities in those environment. They regulate that particular environment, and they also regulate the other living systems, or they affect, I would say, they affect the other living flora in that environment. So, distribution of microorganisms in nature is omnipresent. Now, if you see the nursing, what is basic concept of the nursing? There are various complete definitions of nursing which have been given by ICN, International Council of Nursing, or ANA, American Nursing Associations. But basically, in all these definitions which I have written here in my PowerPoint, ultimately convinces that it is the care which is taken either of a diseased individual or even of a healthy individual or a disabled individual. Their health profiles are to be looked after. It can be an individual, it can be a group of people, or it can be a community. So, nursing means taking care of. Now, when you are taking care of in the environment where there are thousands of microorganisms, then you have to naturally learn about that. You have to have a knowledge of what is existing surrounding us. Because if we ignore them, then the activities of those minor creatures, activities of microorganisms, will directly or indirectly influence the person who is being taken care of. So, it is very important that microbiology should be known in depth for nursing students. The beginning of the modern nursing dates back to the role of Florence Nightingale in 1860s. She was known as a lady with lamb, because she used to take care of various injured individuals during war. Now, since then, lot has been developed into nursing, but the microbiology has not been given a due importance in this particular field. Hence, it is necessary that a nursing should be taught along with the role of microorganisms, and every nurse should know how these organisms, they can help them to take a proper care. Now, why knowledge of nursing is essential? Why this particular branch of microbiology plays a dominant role? Because, as it has been mentioned in this slide, there are various points where you will find that microbiology plays a dominant role. For example, in prevention of infection, a nurse can play a great role in prevention of infection. She or he is a member of infection control unit of that particular hospital. Second, nursing students or a nurse should have a thorough knowledge of what is normal flora and what is a causative agent of a disease. Third, a nurse should be having a knowledge how to maintain a sterile environment or a field or that particular area, as well as the equipments which are being used for taking care of. Next is, in hospitals or during the daily day-to-day work, if a person is sick, then samples are being collected and is being sent to the laboratory for further analysis. The collection of the sample is a primary duty of a nurse. If proper sample is being collected without any contamination, then that would make a technician to diagnose the disease properly. Another role of a nursing staff is they help in vaccination or immunization program, and this is very essential to control the epidemic or to save a patient from the illness. Next comes the role of nurse in dispose of, or I would say disposal of, biomedical hazardous waste. Biomedical waste is usually a hazardous waste. Why we label them as hazardous? Because if it is thrown in open, then it may lead to contamination and infection of the community, and therefore it is also essential to know how to dispose these biomedical waste. So a nurse should definitely know about this. Then another role is to coordinate the different departments of a hospital where the patient is admitted. Coordination in a sense that what kind of aseptic precautions and aseptic conditions have to be followed. Another role is the maintenance of an operation theatre. Hundreds of surgeries take place in a big hospital. These surgeries are performed under aseptic conditions. And an operation theatre is a room or a place where these surgeries take place. And therefore, they have to maintain this operation theatre in a way that sterility is maintained. Then, last but not the least, is in community or in a society. A nursing staff should educate the people in health and hygiene awareness in a community. There are various ways and means by which these nursing staff can carry out these activities. So, to sum up, nursing staff members or a nurse have to perform many functions, and in each of these multitask roles, the knowledge of microbiology plays a paramount importance. It is of a high importance. Now, we'll be discussing these points one by one in depth. The first is the nurse should know the mode of spread of infection. Now, first, let me define or let me tell you what is infection. The common concept for a layman is that infection means a disease. Well, it is not so. Infection means the presence of organisms and the multiplication of the organism in an individual is known as infection. This may or may not lead to infection. It means that we all are infected at any given time immediately after our birth. Immediately after our birth, because microorganisms are omnipresent, because the microorganisms are present in all environment, as soon as the birth takes place, the skin, the upper surface of the body, as well as within a short duration, the entire bowel of a human being is colonized with microorganisms. I am using the word colonized. Or you can say the person is infected. So infection means the presence and the multiplication of the organism in an individual. That does not necessarily lead to a disease. Now the onset of disease takes place when these microorganisms, they produce certain undesirable or uncomfortable physiological or anatomical problems. So any deviation from a healthy individuals due to colonization of the microorganisms will lead to disease. And in a disease, the host suffers, while the parasite or the microorganisms will gain nutrition and will reproduce in that individual. So, the role of microorganism in causing a disease should be known. Now let us suppose, for an instance, that when a person is infected, now I am using the word infected in a layman's sense. Infected means the person is suffering from a disease. So when a person is having, or it is established that he is a diseased individual, it is the function of microorganism to find a new host. Otherwise, he will not be able to survive. Because once the host dies, the microorganisms will also be dead. So, it is the function or it is the property of an organism to find a new host to continue its survival. And that is how the disease spreads from one individual to another. From one person who is healthy, from a diseased individual, the organism reaches to a healthy individual, from a disease to a healthy individual, and again that organism will carry out the same cycle. He will enter into the host, he will multiply, and he will produce disease. So that organism which is transmitted from the diseased individual to a healthy individual is known as a mode of transmission. And this mode of transmission can be either by inhalation or ingestion or injection. If you see this diagram, there here you can see that there the mode of transmissions we can broadly divide into two categories, that is direct mode of transmission and indirect mode of transmission. This direct mode of transmission can be through direct contact, that is when we touch, when a diseased individual or an infected individual touches the healthy individual, that is the direct contact, or it can be transmitted by droplets, as we have seen it in case of corona. It is a respiratory infection and the transmission is through droplets. These droplets can be formed either during talking, coughing, or sneezing. So, direct transmission can be direct contact transmission, or it can be a droplet spread. While in case of an indirect transmission, the indirect transmission can be either through airborne, that is through air, vehicle borne, the vehicle means some agent which transmits it from the disease to a healthy individuals, or it can be vector borne. Vector means certain living organisms like mosquito, for example dengue or chikungunya. Both dengue and chikungunya, causative agent is a virus. But it is transmitted through a vector, and that vector is mosquito. So remember, there is a great difference between the causative agent and a vector. Vector simply carries that causative agent from the diseased to a healthy individual. So, indirect mode of transmission can be, as I have told you, either airborne, vehicle-borne, or a vector-borne. And this vector-borne can be either mechanical vectors or biological vectors. I gave you the example of biological vectors, while the mechanical vector is through some fomites. Fomites, they can indirectly transfer disease from one individual to another. This diagram shows how the infection chain continues, or the mode of transmission of various diseases. The second important thing is the role of nurse to distinguish between normal flora and a causative agent. As I have told you that microorganisms are present everywhere. The moment we are born, we are colonized by different types of microorganisms, either inside our body or on our body, that is on the skin. Now, differentiation of a normal flora and a causative agent is necessary because normal flora, they do not cause the disease. Normal flora, why the name itself indicates normal flora. Flora, here the word is used in sense of microorganisms. So normal flora are those organisms which at any given point of time is found normally. It is normally found on the body surface or inside the body of a healthy individual. For example, in our colon, intestine, we always have a presence of Escherichia coli. The name itself, it was discovered by scientist Escherichia, and coli means colon. It is always present in colon. Similarly, the role of streptococci on our skin is always there. The presence of various types of yeast and many other organisms is there on our skin. These kinds of organisms which are normally present, they are known as normal flora. So these normal flora, they are non-pathogenic organisms, and their presence do not harm the body. It does not harm the host. Rather, I would say that in many instances, they have been found to play an important role in protecting, or they are beneficial to the host. So that is what we call normal flora. While the causative agent means the organism which is responsible for that disease. We had seen it in earlier lecture. Koch postulates given by Robert Koch, which established that for a pathogen, these four postulates should be looked upon. For every disease, there is a causative agent. And when that causative agent infects or causes a disease, there are set of symptoms which are observed. And from that individual who is diseased, that organism can be re-isolated. And if it is inoculated into the healthy individual again, it will cause a similar disease. So causative agent means the organism responsible for causing infection. So now you should be very clear what is normal flora and what is a causative agent. These causative agent, or what we call them as a pathogens. Causative agent means the agent which causes the disease, and the name is basically, or what we call them as a pathogen. So now we will call these causative agent as a pathogens, and these pathogens can fall into any of these categories. It can be viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, or it can be minute worms. So these pathogens, pathogen is a collective name of the individuals or the agent which causes the disease. Here it is a list. Bacteria, they cause these many diseases, including TB, pneumonia, streptococcal infections, then gonorrhea, scarlet fever, typhoid, diphtheria, pertussis, bubonic plague. All these diseases are caused by bacteria. So these are the bacterial pathogens. Similarly, there are viral pathogens. One of the most prominent, which is at present we are talking about, is a coronavirus, dengue, chikungunya, polio, herpes, AIDS. These are the diseases which are caused by these viruses. Similarly, fungi, mucormycosis, aspergillosis, tinea, that is the disease of skin. All these, they are caused by fungi. Then we have protozoal disease. Protozoal diseases include malaria, trichomoniasis, then giardia, cryptococcidiosis, etc. And helminths, these are the worms. So these are the various diseases which are caused by the causative agents, and causative agent may fall into any of these categories. It can be bacteria, it can be virus, it can be fungi, it can be protozoa, or they can be even helminths, that is the worms. Now going further, normal flora, as we have talked about, they can be either normal as usual, or it can be indigenous. Indigenous means native, naive. Sometimes they are also referred to as a transient flora. Transient flora, as the word indicates, transient. Transient means in the process of shifting. So these transient flora, they are the microorganisms which resides in or on our body for a shorter durations. Again, I would reiterate that these transient flora are also non-pathogenic in most cases. They either inhibit skin, mucous membranes for hours, days, or weeks, and then they will disappear. So they come for a short time, stay, establish themselves, but they do not cause any disease. However, this is a big and important word. However, if the person is immunocompromised, or you can say, if the immunity of an individual is very low, then even this transient or normal flora may cause a disease. Usually they are non-pathogens, but if the host has a poor immunity, or its normal natural defense system is impaired, then they may cause the disease. And under such circumstances, these organisms, we call them as opportunist microorganisms, or in a vague sense we also call them as secondary pathogen. So I hope you are clear with what is normal flora, transient flora, and a causative agent of the disease. A nurse should be well acquainted with these organisms and should not be misguided in a sense that a normal flora may be considered as a pathogen and the treatment continues accordingly. Because these normal flora, they are normally associated with each and every part of the body. Very few part of the body they are sterile. Otherwise, the entire bowel, right from mouth to the anus or the intestine, they are fully loaded with microorganisms. Similarly, the skin, the largest organ which has the highest surface area, it is totally colonized with microorganisms. And therefore, such difference should be known to a nursing staff, and as a result, the efficiency or the work which she or he is doing can have a clear difference. This is the diagram which shows the normal flora. The diagram shows the organisms present in mouth, organism present in bowel, in intestine, even in urinogenital tract, on skin. So these are the various organisms, their names and how they are distributed in our human body. Now comes a very, very important aspect, and that is the principle of asepsis. What is asepsis? Asepsis technique is a process or it is a procedure which is used to achieve asepsis so that prevention of transfer of potentially pathogenic organisms from disease to a susceptible host. The host can be healthy, but that healthy host is a susceptible individual. Then the causative agent, that is the pathogen, can be transferred from a disease to that individual by certain procedures, which if they are not handled aseptically, then the disease can be transferred. This is due to the inappropriate handling of various things and various procedures which are not done aseptically, so that the causative agent by various means will be transferred from the disease to a potentially susceptible individuals. Now, what are the general principles of aseptic techniques? To maintain aseptic conditions, to maintain aseptic procedures, some of the important things that one has to understand is that you should always use, or it is a must that the nurse should use sterile items within a sterile field. Sterile items within sterile field. Sterile field means sterile environment. Where the environment is sterile, one has to use sterile items. Now, what is sterile? Sterile means anything which is free of microorganisms. Either they are killed or they are removed. Those things where there is no living organisms of any kind. I am using the word no organism, living organism of any kind. That is sterile. So, nurse should use sterile items in a sterile field. Then, second point, Sterile persons are gowned and gloved. You must have seen that during Corona, people were wearing a gown or an apron, or what we popularly call it as a PPE kit. This PPE kit covers the individual from head to bottom. Even doctors, while visiting a patient for a normal infection, they also wear the gown, apron and gloves. This is known as sterile or scrubbed. Scrub means hands are being scrubbed so that no normal flora or even a transient flora is passed on to a healthy individuals. Third thing, sterile persons, they operate within a sterile field. Sterile persons. When I am using the word sterile personals, means not an individual who is sterile, but whatever the apparels he is wearing, including gloves or a cap, they have to be sterile. So these persons, we call them as a sterile persons. They should operate within the sterile environment. Sterile items within the sterile field. Even sterile drapes are used to create sterile fields. Drapes are used in large to separate one individual from the another. So these have to be sterile. All items which are used, all equipments which are used, now we come to equipments. All equipments which are used in a sterile field should be sterile. These items or equipments, they should be opened up under sterile conditions. They are dispensed, means once they are used, they are dispensed and they are transferred by aseptic methods to maintain the integrity of sterility. It means that from the beginning to the end, all procedures which are being carried out in a sterile environment has to be aseptic. And this aseptic conditions have to be maintained throughout the process, because sometimes the process can be very long. It can be very long. One thing which one should know, or you should know, that it is easy to create a sterile environment, but it is not that easy to maintain that environment for a long period of time. So if we are treating or if we are operating a person in a hospital or in an environment where sterility has been maintained throughout the process, then the chances of recovery or successful surgery is very high. Last, one of the principles is that all staff members, including nursing staff, they should be trained to understand and to recognize where the procedure has gone faulty, or they have broken the sterility. They should know, they should understand that I did this or I went through such a procedure which was not right, and as a result the sterility was broken, aseptic condition procedure was not correctly done, and therefore in future if they recognize their mistake, then that can be corrected for the future. Now, the principle of aseptic surgery includes certain other things also. For example, hand hygiene. Everybody is asked day to day. It is a routine. It should be made a routine practice that we should clean our hand with disinfectant or with detergents many times a day. Because, as I have told you, our hands are exposed in environment. We touch table, pen, pencils, or vehicles, or any other material in an environment which is not sterile. So hand is contaminated now, and therefore frequent washing will reduce the load of microorganisms, either pathogenic or normal organisms, from our hands. So it is a common practice to have a health hand hygiene. Second, safe storage of equipments. The equipments including scalpel, needles, or any other large instruments which are used for surgery or for examination of a patient should be stored properly, should be cleaned and should be stored properly. Then cleaning of the procedure trolley or the tray. Then personal protective equipments, PPE kits, which are worn by nursing staff as well as the doctors, medical, clinical individuals, staff members. Then preparation of the environment. Environment where the patient is being operated or it is examined should be sterile. Then preparation of the patient. The patient himself should be prepared properly. Means the patient is also to be, or he is also required to be covered with certain sterile clothings so that he does not transmit it, so that he doesn't transmit the microorganisms to the nursing staff, which may in turn they pass on to a healthy individuals. Disposal of waste, that we are going to study next. And then finally the documentation. Documentations are an important part of any department and it has to be properly documented. Now, maintaining a sterile field. We have been talking about maintaining a sterile environment, sterile field. For this, to create a sterile environment and to maintain them for a long time, as I have told you, requires the knowledge of microbiology. Because what is required for a sterility is to remove all kinds of organisms, all types of organisms from that environment. Then it will be known as a sterile environment. Now, sterilization, as I have told you, is an absolute term, because 100% sterilization is rather not desirable, or it is very costly and it is not achieved in all senses. Because when we are talking about sterilization of operation theatres, sterilization of equipments and sterilization of hundreds of other things, then 100%, to achieve a 100% sterilization is a rarity. So absolute concept of absolute sterilization is necessary. 100% sterilization is not, that is absolute sterilization is not possible, or it is rather not achieved every time, and therefore the conditions or the sterile environment which is being created should be such that the disease is not transmitted. This may be achieved even by disinfection in a proper and absolute manner. Remember, disinfection and sterile. These two words are both having different meaning. Sterile means no organism at all of any kind, while disinfection means removing potentially pathogenic organisms from that area, from that vicinity. Next comes the collection of microorganisms, or I would say collection of specimens which have microorganisms or causative agents. So we are collecting specimen for diagnosis or for some study which may lead to perfect diagnosis. Various diseases can be diagnosed by studying blood or serum from them, counting the blood cells, observing under microscope, cerebrospinal fluid, urine, stool, or some other samples like saliva, semen, etc. Now, collection of these kinds of specimens requires two things. The specimen which we are collecting should be the representative of that particular area or a tissue. Representative of that. When we collect blood, we collect few ml of blood, but that few ml, 5 ml of blood which is being collected for analysis, it represents the entire blood circulating in the body. For a biopsy, when we take a little bit of sample, that sample is a representative of that tissue as a whole. So first thing, a sample should be a proper representative of that tissue or that organ. Second important thing is, while collecting a sample, it should be without any contamination. Now, I just previously mentioned that our body is infected with hundreds of different species of microorganisms, either on the surface of the body or inside the body. So while collecting the sample, it should not be contaminated with these normal flora. Otherwise, the wrong results may be reported. Instead of a causative agent, the laboratory may report a normal flora, which is usually a normal flora, as a causative agent, and the entire line of treatment will be changed. So, accurate collection techniques should be understood by nurses and must reduce the risk of contamination. In many cases, such contamination is unavoidable. For example, when you collect a stool specimen, the fecal material is invariably loaded with hundreds of organisms. So, on the basis of the organism, on the basis of symptoms, on the basis of treatment which has been offered to the patient, depending upon all these factors, the causative agent has to be diagnosed. And therefore, the knowledge of microbiology is of a predominant importance. Next very important role that a nursing staff should understand, and it involves the process of immunization and vaccination. At present, the vaccination drive against coronavirus is going throughout the world. Even in India, the government is insisting of vaccinating every individual. This work is mainly performed by trained or authorized nursing staff. Now, vaccination or these immunization programs are the programs which helps in building up the immunity of an individual and as a whole of a community. So these vaccines, how are they made? These vaccines, they are basically the organism or the causative agent itself, or the part of that causative agent, or the substance produced by that causative agent, that is like toxins. So these components of a causative agent, either the organism as a whole or in part, or the substances produced by these causative agents, whatever it may be, they are inactivated, or the proper word is attenuated, or many times they are killed, so that virulence is zero, that is, the virulence power is diminished or nullified, but the antigenicity remains intact. So vaccines are the materials prepared from the causative agent as a whole, or their part of, or the substances produced by these causative agents, whatever it may be. Nowadays, it has to be supplemented with the genomes which codes for their antigenicity, either mRNA or DNA. These are the new modern vaccines. So these vaccines, they act in a way that when it is injected to an individual who has been vaccinated will produce an immune response, which in turn will protect the person when he comes across the normal organism. So this is a vaccine. The virulence is minimized or virulence is decreased, but the antigenicity remains same. So when antigenicity remains the same, it provokes an immune response in a healthy individuals, and that immune response will be able to fight whenever similar or the same antigen comes across for the second time. This is basically a vaccine. Now, nursing staff should understand that these vaccines are nothing else but microorganisms or their products, either microorganism, intact microorganisms, killed microorganism, or the part of that microorganism. So it is basically the microorganisms, and they are being given to an individual, injected in an individual, either oral or by injections. And they are the one who inject the healthy individuals for immunity. And they should be able to convince, they should be able to explain whatever the doubts, whatever the questions which arises in the mind of normal layman. They should provide patients with the evidence-based informations about vaccine safety. Otherwise, for a layman, they are frightened. They are afraid of taking vaccines. And they shy away or they run away from the vaccination programs. So they should be able to, nursing staff should be able to convey the importance of vaccination, that if the vaccine is being given, if vaccine is taken by you, then in future you will be safe. So there is a very important role of nursing staff in vaccination of an individual. In India, we have a child immunization program up to the age of 10 or so, where at a definite time interval, a child is being given certain doses of vaccination. This table indicates that which vaccines are to be given at birth, that is as soon as the child is born. For example, like BCG, polio, oral polio, or hepatitis vaccine. After 6 weeks, we have again oral polio 1, which is a pentavalent, then rotavirus vaccine, then fractional dose of inactivated polio vaccine, pneumococcal conjugate vaccines. After 10 weeks, again oral polio vaccine, 14 weeks oral polio vaccines. Then after 16 to 24 weeks, we have got various vaccines of diphtheria, pertussis, then tetanus, that is DPT, diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus. Then oral polio vaccines, a booster dose. At an age of 10, tetanus or diphtheria vaccines. Like this, various vaccines are to be given to healthy individuals or the child to protect themselves from various diseases in future. And this role is to be played by nursing staff in convincing an individual, advising, or I would say a community. If they explain properly, then vaccination program is highly successful. And for that, they should know about microbiology. Then comes disposal of biomedical waste. What is biomedical waste? The definition of a biomedical waste is any waste material which is generated during diagnosis, that is in the early stage, that is before the onset of disease or after the onset of the disease, when the patient is feeling uncomfortable, he goes to the medical staff, hospitals, doctors, they diagnose that. So any waste which is generated during diagnosis or during treatment or during immunization, either of human beings or animals, or in connection with research activities or biological production or testing of these vaccines. So in short, you can say any waste which is generated in hospital or at home or in a clinic for diagnosis, for treatment or post-treatment or during immunization or during the production of such vaccines or testing of these vaccines, any waste material which is generated is labeled as or is called as biomedical wastes. Now, In what way a nursing staff is associated with this? Basically, they are associated for monitoring, sorting, collection, storage and transport procedures of these biomedical waste. It means that at each and every step of disposal of these biomedical waste, nursing staff is associated with this. Because whatever the waste is generated, that waste has to be disposed of, that has to be thrown out. But one cannot throw out or dispose this biomedical waste in a routine manner like what we do for kitchen waste. Kitchen waste and biomedical waste, they are not the same, because biomedical waste contains various biological hazards. Many times you will see this kind of symbol. This symbol indicates biohazard. It means if it is not disposed of properly, and if this biohazardous materials comes in contact with the healthy individuals, that healthy individuals will fall sick. So that is a biohazard. So nursing staff is associated with what? Monitoring. Sorting means categorizing those biomedical waste. Biomedical waste are categorized on the basis of various characteristics, and their collection is done in different color code bags. So monitoring, sorting, collecting, then storing. Storing means till it is being sent or it is collected by an authorized person and it is disposed of in certain standard procedures, transport procedures. So in each and every steps, a nursing staff plays an active role, because if any of these procedures, either monitoring, sorting, collecting, storing and transporting, if there is negligence, then these biohazard materials, which may include certain pathogens or toxic chemicals, may escape if not properly stored, if not properly collected, into environment and may cause big hazards. So these are the various categories: sharp waste, infectious waste, pathological waste, pharmacological waste, pharmaceutical waste, chemical waste and radioactive waste. Radioactive waste is mainly used in cancer hospitals, or for example in diagnosis of certain diseases. Various tests are being used where they use radioactive materials. So these radioactive waste are used for diagnosis as well as for treatments. Certain chemicals, radioactive chemicals, are used for treatments. So these kinds of waste have to be properly collected. Then they have to be segregated. Means once it is collected, it has been collected from a clinic or hospital, they have to be separated into categories. These categories which have been separated has been mentioned here, like cytotoxic waste, then certain solid waste, anatomical waste, and these wastes, they are to be stored or collected in a specific bag, and these bags are given color codes. Say for example black, red, yellow, blue and white. Depending upon the type of material, they are stored, and once they are stored, they can be properly disposed, because disposal procedures for different kinds of waste is not different. It is not same for all. It is different for different kind of waste. So on the basis of that, the biomedical waste is disposed. Therefore, a nursing staff plays a role. They should know about microbiology, because microorganisms will be present in this medical waste. Last point is the goal of community, the role of nursing staff in community and society. Here, why they need to know microbiology? Because they need to know an overview how microorganisms plays a role in causing a disease, in providing immunity. Both these things, they know that, and because they know that, they can better educate the community. Because in a community like India, where the population is very extremely large, no enough doctors are there for community. So nursing staff, they are the bridge between the doctors and the layman or the ordinary people. So the goal of community health nursing is to promote a healthy lifestyle, prevent disease, provide direct care, educate the community, promote immunization and vaccination, institute health and wellness programs, and conduct research and improve healthcare. Now, among these various goals, the knowledge of microbiology can be used here. It can be used in immunization and this. Overall, promoting a healthy lifestyle, it means educating the people to live in a clean and hygienic environment, to wash their hands multiple times in a day, to eat a healthy food, to live in a hygienic environment, to use certain materials like, say for example, mosquito net to prevent ourselves from chikungunya or dengue fever. You should not store water in the near your home. There should be water should go into drainage. It should not be open drainage. Otherwise there will be breeding of mosquito. These mosquitoes, they spread chikungunya and dengue. This is just an example I have given. During Corona, government has mobilized the nursing staff in the maximum possible way. Because such an epidemic can only be brought into control when each and every individual will be able to follow certain standard hygienic procedures, like wearing a mask. Government makes it mandatory. And if the people are educated properly, then they themselves will start wearing the mask, taking a vaccine. Once they understand that vaccinating an individual is for their own benefit, if they are vaccinated, they will not catch the disease, or the probability of getting a disease is negligible. So if such education, if such awareness is spreaded among the community in a society, then this can be done by nursing staff. Because nursing staff is in direct contact with the patient, relatives of the patient, or the other community. This is very true, specifically at primary health center in the rural areas, in the villages, where very few doctors are available. So nursing staff has to carry out such kinds of role. So providing education in community and in a society, even there also the role of microbiology is essential. So to sum up the entire lecture, we will go to again the first few slides. These points that knowledge of microbiology helps nurse in every field of healthcare. First, prevention of infection. Second, to have a knowledge about normal flora and a causative agent. The difference between them there has to be known. To maintain the sterile environment, sterile field or sterile equipments which are being used for diagnosis or treatment of an individual. Then collection of a sample from the patient, which are to be collected in a standard procedure and to be transported to the concerned laboratory. Then next comes in immunization and vaccination. The role of microbiology is well established. For disposal of biomedical waste or biohazardous material, here also the knowledge of microbiology is essential, because if a virus or a bacteria are not properly disposed of, then that may lead to a spread of disease. I will tell you one incident once we are through this. Then coordinate between different departments to administer medicines. Now it is also necessary for the nursing staff, when they know that this type of medicine is being given to, or it is being given for such a treatment, it is necessary for them to know the mode of action of these medicines. I would not say in great depth, but they should know primarily about the mode of action of these medicines, how they are able to control the causative agent. Where do they act? They act on cell wall or a protein synthesis or a nucleic acid, or the permeability or the competitive inhibition is being done. So they should know about how to administer the medicines and which medicines are being given and explain them to the patients. Then to maintain the operation theatre, because the operation theatre is the one where major surgical procedures are being carried out. The person has entered, or he has been admitted for certain complications, for certain surgery. But once the surgery is completed, then the patient should recover fully. There should not be post-surgical complications which are normally observed due to aseptic procedures. This would unnecessarily increase the stay in the hospital, as well as financial burden is very high to the organism. Then finally, providing health education and hygiene awareness to the community, that we have already discussed in detail. Here I am at the last, I am going to tell you about the prevailing situation where the coronavirus, which people think, or various scientists, they have a supportive evidence that this virus escaped from the Wuhan laboratory. When this virus escaped from the Wuhan laboratory, why it escaped? Let us consider for a while that it is true that it escaped from the Wuhan laboratory. Then why it escaped from there? Whatever the lapses were there, it was because that they must not have followed the standard procedures, or there have been some lapses, certain mistakes which might have occurred during following a certain procedures. As a result, the virus which was contained in that environment, that escaped into the external environment. And see the result. That virus was so virulent that within a period of 6 months, that virus spreaded in the entire world. And the epidemiology, or I would say the pandemic nature of the disease was established. All continents of this planet, all countries, they suffered a severe human loss as well as economic loss. And the result was somebody did not know about the standard procedures involved in containment. The containment of disease in a particular area has to be required, and this requires a knowledge of microbiology. Because for a layman, the one which is not observed, the things which we do not see, they think that this is not existing. But as I have told you, the microorganisms are omnipresent, they are present at all places, and thank God, most of them, they are non-pathogens, but a few percentage which are pathogenic, they can colonize the individual and spread an infection. Therefore, to conclude that these organisms which are pathogenic needs to be contained and controlled, and this requires a knowledge of microbiology. Nursing staff, the primary aim of the nursing staff is to take care either in hospital or even before the person is admitted to hospital, so that the health of an individual is maintained properly. And therefore, for them, it is also necessary to understand the subject of microbiology. I hope now you must be very clear with the role of microbiology in nursing. Thank you, and thank you all.